talking about, that teenager who called in, was sincere, then how completely morally reprehensible it is that he's out there exploiting someone like that, who is that young and that vulnerable and lacking in whatever self-esteem she has, right?
Right.
I mean, that to me is what's, you take this poor 16-year-old kid who thinks of herself as some, fat, ugly girl that no one loves, and and just exploit that for, your own reputation, your gain, or Benny Hinn does for money, right?
Yeah.
And
actually, that's I was going to talk about him actually.
Oh, Benny.
And the interesting thing, when I did some research, I was looking all over the internet for stuff like this. Have you ever heard of somebody by the name of Mark Havel?
Mark, what's the last name?
Havel, Havel.
Habel.
V is in Victor.
Google is your friend. I want to say that I've heard that name.
I'll jump into it.
Mark Havel. Okay.
I'll jump into it, and he's a former faith healer, and he comes out by saying, "This is how I do it." And he goes, "I get people into a suggestive state," is what he says. He goes, "Music is a great tool. Played over long periods of time. Beats that mimic breathing help out as well. Tunes that people are familiar with are also helpful." And he also says that a key element is the crowd. Crowds heighten experience. Like when watching a comedy with friends, you laugh harder, which is true. And he goes, tone of voice and repeating oneself is very important. He goes, people come in aware of their problems, adding to the suggestive state. What are they feeling? Hypnosis reduces feelings of pain. Like, he just goes on and on and on into explaining exactly how this goes about. But generally, the key ingredient in faith healing is people go in wanting this. That's the key ingredient. You want it to happen, so it does. And but there's nothing to it. If that were true, if that were actually true, then I mean, what's a good example of some?
Well, when Jan Crouch, the wife of Paul Crouch, the man of the Penguins, when she was diagnosed with, I think it was ovarian cancer, I mean, she was, she recovered, right? But thanks to medical science, right? She checked in, and this is the immediate question that you ask in a situation like this. Here are the Crouches who have this $100 million a year Christian broadcasting network that goes out worldwide. They give a lot of airtime or sell, rent, whatever. They have a deal. I mean, they are the reason that Benny Hinn is global, right? I mean, he's one of their big stars on TBN, right?
Yeah.
And his faith healing crusades, right? His miracle crusades, where you're slain in the spirit, and and he's getting up there. He's telling everybody. So anyway, the point is, when she came down with cancer, she could have had Benny Hinn cure her with the laying on of hands instantly through God's grace, or she could have done what she actually did do, which is check into Cedars-Sinai Hospital and have medical science, have actual oncologists deal with her problem.
Right.
Using science. That's what she did. So right away, you're like, this, to me, is as firm a piece of proof as you could ever ask for, that the Crouches themselves don't believe Benny Hinn actually does what he does. They don't believe. And this is one of the leading, for this couple, the leading figures in evangelical Christian broadcasting at all, right? I mean, the Crouches are right up there at the top there with Pat Robertson and CBN and the whole rest of them. I mean, they themselves don't believe what's going on.
No.
In those faith healing things. But they're perfectly happy to keep pumping it out on the air so that the rubes will keep chucking in their money.
Yeah.
And that's what's morally reprehensible. I mean, the simple fact, if she did not trust entirely in Benny Hinn to cure her cancer, channel God through his healing touch and slay her in the spirit and cure that cancer that way, then she doesn't believe he can do it.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, as long as they keep tossing into the donation basket, or contribution basket, or whatever you call it, that's basically all they want. I mean, I was looking at, Benny Hinn. Let's see. I was listening to. Are you familiar with what do they call it? CFI? Canadian Federation of Information, or what, I think that's the
No, not the Center for Inquiry.
So yeah, is that what it is?
So CFI, Center for Inquiry, we have a chapter down here, Center for Inquiry, Austin. That was, they published Skeptical Inquirer.
Yeah.
For Inquiry magazine, or are you thinking of a different CFI?
I think
because that's the CFI I know is the Center for Inquiry.
I think the same one. I went to like a meeting. It was like a meetup group with atheists, and I just want to check them out. And then someone showed up, and they handed. I probably actually have the guy's card somewhere around here, but anyways, someone's popping in the room. Anyways, I checked. I went to one of their sites, and they had James Randi, this MP3 that you could download about him talking about faith healers. And I didn't know this, but James Randi actually exposed his first faith healer in Toronto, which was kind of interesting. It was some guy that was like in a church, and he was doing like some balancing trick and just fooling people, and Randy went up and showed exactly how to do it, and that kind of,
it's stage magic, really. It's what it is.
Well, James Randi's a magician, so he knows what to do. Then he said, Benny Hinn, he whips the crowd into a frenzy. He lists ailments into the crowd, and then asks for people to come down and testify. Note the order. So that's his.
Well, there was an ABC, I think it was ABC Television, did a lengthy expose of Benny Hinn, and took some cameras in, to one of his rallies. And they decided to follow the lives of some of the people, because they're not all plants, right? They can't all be plants, because hundreds of them go up. But what you're getting there is, as Mark Hamill was talking about, without any irony, interestingly, that communal reinforcement of the crowd. Everyone's doing it, so then everyone else starts doing it. They get up there, and because it's expected of them, they'll do the thing when Benny Hinn waves his arm and goes, huzzah, or whatever he does, and they fall over and spaz out on stage, and that's their little moment on stage. Right?
Yeah.
But the journalists decided to, I think this is on YouTube, they decided to follow some of these people who had come to, and this is what's horrible, this is what's tragic, people with real illnesses, life-threatening conditions. It's not that they don't go to their doctors, but in their desperation, they will go to Benny Hinn's rallies. And they'll wait in line, right? People in wheelchairs, kids with, horrible metastasized tumors. And, expecting, and some of them don't get up on stage. And one of the things that this expose showed is that people who were really, really ill, right, where they couldn't pull the act off, like the dude with an amputee who wanted his leg back or something like that. If you had a real serious medical condition, his handlers would keep you from ever getting up on stage, right? So as not to blow the act. Yeah. So the journalists would follow. There was this mother and her son was deathly ill, and were just out there in the crowd with them, and they were just showing this whole process by which they were constantly put off and not allowed to join the lineup of people who were going up on stage and getting slapped on the head and pretending to be healed of things. And it's because the kid had a genuine illness, right? And it's really, really just the complete moral bankruptcy of being the sort of person who would do this.
Yeah, it's...
where actual lives are on the line here, and he's thinking nothing but buckets, and they literally are buckets. You go to Home Depot and you'll get a big bucket to pour paint or manure into, or whatever, right? I mean, that's these guys are walking around with these kinds of buckets, and cash is just being flung into the buckets until they're full to overflowing. The sheer moral evil of that is really quite staggering, and they do it without a second thought. It stuns me. What goes on in the evangelical. I mean, when you lie for Jesus, it's a whole new dimension of lying that